This morning, the crucial jobs report, Australians out of work in record numbers, what it means for the economy and how long it'll take to recover. Insults fly, Peter Dutton takes aim at the Queensland Government over a planned bid for stricken airline Virgin Australia. And manhunt ends, Victorian fugitive Ricardo Barbaro finally caught in Sydney.
This is 7 News with Ann Sanders.
Good morning. We're standing by for the announcement of those crucial jobs figures. We'll bring them to you shortly. But first to the breakthrough in the nationwide hunt for Gangland fugitive Ricardo Barbaro, wanted over the murder of his girlfriend Ellie Price. The 33-year-old was arrested in Western Sydney during the middle of the night. He didn't go quietly, brawling with officers as they took him into custody. For more, let's go to Natasha Squarey. Natasha, he's evaded capture for more than a week.
That's right, Anne. Police had been looking for the 33-year-old for 10 days, but after a tip-off, heavily armed tactical officers moved in just after midnight and arrested the accused killer inside this unit block here at Wentworth Point in Sydney's west. Detectives had been looking for Ricardo Barbaro after his 26-year-old girlfriend, Ellie Price, was found dead in her South Melbourne apartment on May 4. The nationwide manhunt came to a dramatic end this morning, with residents here telling us they saw police swarm the property and heard a fiery exchange as police tried to cuff their suspect.
I think we're quite shocked. I mean, it's a very calm, peaceful community we live in, and to see such an incredible arrest for the crime the fellow committed was a bit of a shock to us all, I think.
Barbaro was taken into custody and was treated for minor injuries at Concord Hospital. Upon release, he was charged with apprehension on a warrant issued in another state. Victorian detectives are currently en route to Sydney to apply for Barbaro's extradition to Melbourne.
Now to our breaking news on April's unemployment figures just announced. They paint a bleak picture with record numbers of Australians out of work as the economy hemorrhages during the worst pandemic in a century. And economists are warning the fallout from the crisis will last for years to come.
The unemployment rate tends to go up very, very quickly, but it comes down very, very slowly. So it causes, a long period where we see more Australians out of work than we would have done otherwise. If we look at the early 1990s recession, it took 7 years for the unemployment rate to get back to where it was prior to that recession.
All right, so let's go to political reporter Olivia Leeming in Canberra with the full details. Olivia, talk us through these new figures.
Good morning, Anne. Yes, the strict lockdowns imposed by the pandemic have had a devastating impact on the jobs market. The unemployment rate was 5.2% in March. It has now risen to 6.2% in April. Slightly better than some economists had been forecasting. They had expected that figure to rise to somewhere between 7 and 10%. But remember, this is not the entire picture. This does not take into account more than 5 million Australians who are receiving the government's JobKeeper wage subsidy. So without that scheme, the official unemployment rate would be much higher, Anne.
The jobless rate is unlikely to improve in coming months.
No, this is the worst far from over yet. Treasury expects unemployment will peak at 10% in the June quarter, the highest level since 1994 when Australia was still recovering from a recession. Now, it should gradually improve beyond that, but when might we see it return to levels that we saw pre-coronavirus? Well, Deloitte economists not forecasting that to happen for another 4 years. So it will be a very slow recovery. Governments as well under pressure now to implement reforms to drive jobs growth, like accelerating infrastructure projects, looking at tax reform as well, possible policies that are likely to be finalised in coming months, Anne.
Olivia Leeming live in Canberra. Thank you very much, Olivia. And we're standing by for a news conference with the Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Treasurer Josh Frydenberg. We'll take you there live as soon as it happens. Peter Dutton has blasted the Queensland Government over its plans to buy debt-ridden airline Virgin Australia. For more, Joel Dry joins me. Joel, the Home Affairs Minister didn't hold back.
No, good morning, Anne. Peter Dutton clearly does not see the value in the Queensland state investing in Virgin Australia, but that is exactly what is being explored. The State Treasurer has instructed the state-funded but independent Queensland Investment Corporation to explore a bid to buy a stake in the embattled airline. Cameron Dick, the Treasurer, says this is a good idea for three reasons. One, it would protect some vital regional airline routes. Two, it would keep the headquarters right here in Brisbane. And perhaps most importantly, it would protect Queensland jobs. Peter Dutton, however, does not share the view that it is a good idea to spend taxpayer dollars on an airline that essentially is grounded and is in administration with about $7 billion worth of debts.
The Labor Party in Queensland has no money. They have close to $100 billion of debt. So every dollar they spend is borrowed. And they're talking about buying an airline. This is the latest example of Premier Palaszczuk being completely out of her depth. She's putting Queensland on a path to economic disaster.
So despite Peter Dutton's views, the Queensland government, in the guise of the Investment Corp, will continue this bid, but they join a very crowded field. It's thought that about 19 entities are potential buyers, and they are both local and international. The expressions of interest are said to close quite soon, and Deloitte, the administrator, say they want to have this whole sale wrapped up by mid-year. Anne?
Joel Dry reporting. Thank you, Joel. New South Wales health authorities have warned social distancing must be maintained as restrictions lift tomorrow. There were 4 new cases overnight, including one in a regional town in the state's north. Relaxed rules take effect tomorrow, with pubs now also allowed to reopen, along with cafes and restaurants, with a 10-person limit. More from Amber Laidler. Amber, it's a start for some pub owners.
Pubs and clubs have officially been given the green light by the state government to open the doors to their bistros and dining rooms from tomorrow. The decision was made late last night, and it brings them in line with cafes and restaurants. From tomorrow, up to 10 people can be served in dining areas. Alcohol can be served to seated customers, but bars and gaming facilities will remain closed. We are being told, though, it is unlikely all pubs and clubs will be able to reopen.
We appreciate that many large venues won't be viable and won't choose to open, but it's only up to 10 people per venue. So even if there's multiple rooms or multiple facilities in a venue, it's only up to 10 people in one venue.
It appears Sydney-siders are already very excited about the prospect of being able to visit their favourite restaurant or pub again. Many of the venues planning to open this weekend say they are already booked out.
The coronavirus cluster at a Melbourne McDonald's has grown, with 8 cases now linked to the Forker fast food restaurant. The company's Australian CEO says 4 staff and 4 of their family members have contracted COVID-19. The outlet has been shut down for a deep clean, while 92 staff members have been tested and quarantined. An infected staff member worked at the store on Friday before testing positive. The Porsche driver pulled over before a crash which killed 4 police officers on Melbourne's Eastern Freeway has been denied bail. Richard Pusey is facing 12 charges over the crash. The court heard he wasn't proud of his actions in the aftermath when he allegedly filmed the dying moments of one officer instead of providing first aid. But the magistrate ruled Pusey is a danger to the community, partly because of his risk-taking behaviour behind the wheel. We're standing by for a live news conference from the Prime Minister, and the Treasurer will take you there next. Plus, a Sydney wrecking yard goes up in flames. Why police believe it was deliberately lit. Plus, a positive pandemic milestone in the US as beaches reopen. And a blast from the past as the Back to the Future cast reunite. That's next.
In this time of uncertainty, you need the facts.
The death toll from the Ruby Princess continues to climb.
Mounting cases of an illness linked to coronavirus.
A place you can turn to for answers.
Breaking news on pubs opening their restaurants.
Cutting through the confusion, making sense of what's happening.
The concern or broader trade war.
Breaking news, the Queensland Government is exploring the option of buying Virgin Australia.
Turn to 7 News.
You've got to have it. Even if it does mean a little restraint for a while. And putting your savings into an IMB Bank Reward Saver. Whatever your goal, we'll help you get there.
We remain dedicated to helping Australians. We've introduced a help program with a range of relief options to assist customers currently in need. Call us to find out how we can tailor help options for you.
Unlike most modems, Telstra's smart modem is cleverly backed up by Australia's best 4G network. So if the connection to your house stops, your home Wi-Fi won't, giving you Australia's most reliable home Wi-Fi. To experience better Wi-Fi, visit telstra.com today.
I feel for Nick, but at least he's received a full payout from his life insurance, so his family will be taken care of.
Yeah, it's got me thinking. We should do one simple thing and get real life insurance too.
With real life insurance, your family's financial future would be protected by a cash payment from $100,000 up to $1 million if a terminal illness diagnosis or sudden death turned your lives upside down. Call 137 082 or search Real Life Insurance.
Easy on yourself.
Your home means more than ever, and so does having the right home loan. To understand your options, go straight to Aussie. We'll help ensure you have the right loan for right now.
You don't give in, you don't give up. It's called Aussie Spirit, and it takes spirit to get through times like these. It's what inspires us to help. Together we'll get through this. Search Toyota, here to help.
Before making a claim, how do you choose the right lawyer? Do the numbers. At Gerard Malouf & Partners, we have a 98% success rate. We often triple the original offers made to victims before they've engaged us. In total, we've won billions of dollars for our clients. And you pay zero upfront costs and no fees unless we win. Want maximum justice and maximum payouts? There's only one choice. Call Gerard Malouf & Partners, the compensation experts.
There's an urgent health warning in Victoria after toxic mushrooms claimed one life and left two others hanging in the balance. A man in his 70s died after eating the poisonous fungi, and two more people are in a critical condition in hospital. Health officials say everyone must avoid touching, eating or cooking the yellow stainer and death cat mushrooms. An inferno has engulfed a Sydney wrecking yard, destroying dozens of cars. To Andrew Denny now. Andrew, police believe this was deliberately lit.
Well, police have been on site here at Smeaton Grange in Sydney's southwest since the early hours of this morning when a major fire took hold at this auto wreckers. 50 cars were destroyed in what is being treated as a suspicious blaze. Dozens of firefighters were called in to put out the flames that were spreading quickly through the yard. They had to deal with explosions and intense heat, and it took them a number of hours to bring things under control.
Firefighters have fought very, very courageously tonight amidst numerous explosions, running fuel.
Now the suspicion is that someone poured accelerant throughout the yard and set it alight. Detectives are now trying to go through CCTV to figure out exactly what happened. The vehicles were being stored for parts, and the owner says he has no idea why he'd be targeted.
What do you know about the fire last night?
I have no idea, sorry.
Do you know, was it deliberately lit?
I have no idea, sorry.
Anyone who saw anything suspicious here on Camden Valley Way early this morning is asked to come forward and contact Crime Stoppers.
Millions of people have taken to London's public transport after COVID-19 restrictions were wound back, despite Britain still being urged to please work from home. The UK's Treasurer has warned the virus has put the country's economy into recession. Hugh Whitfeld reports.
Workers in the manufacturing, construction and some parts of the services industries are being encouraged to return back to work if it is safe and only if they can't work from home. That means we have seen an uptick in the number of people using public transport, despite the fact the government is imploring people to try and walk, ride or drive to work. Some bad news for the British economy. The Chancellor Rishi Sunak saying the UK economy is in right now a significant recession. It's likely to last some time. There's a triple whammy they're trying to avoid. That is a possible second wave of the virus coming through, sending the country back into lockdown, how the country is going to emerge from this lockdown, and Brexit. Remember that. It's due at the end of the year. It's meant to be finalised by then, and all of that could impact Australia's recovery too.
It's going to damage
exports from other countries if countries like the UK have a much more severe decline than elsewhere.
The lockdown has eased in part here in Britain. People are allowed now out of their home as much as they like. They can meet one friend in the park 2 metres away from them, but only one friend at a time. So you can't meet both your mum and your dad in the park at the same time if you don't live with them. And some sports have returned as well. Golf, fishing and tennis, but only singles tennis.
Thanks, Hugh. Donald Trump has rejected the advice of his top coronavirus expert, who says ending coronavirus lockdowns could cost lives. States frustrated with restrictions are taking measures into their own hands, including reopening beaches. Ash Mullaney reports.
With almost all states easing restrictions, Los Angeles marked a symbolic milestone today with the city reopening its beaches. The coastline, after a 6-week closure, looked a little different. Surfers and swimmers were allowed back in the water, no sunbaking or picnics, although a handful ignored the order. LA's mayor put it bluntly this morning, warning the city will never fully reopen until there's a cure or vaccine for the coronavirus. A message echoed on Capitol Hill after top doctor Anthony Fauci testified states could needlessly lose lives if they reopen too soon. The president was once again upbeat about an economic recovery today, urging states to reopen schools and universities too, with this response to Dr. Fauci's testimony.
I was surprised by his answer, actually, because, it's just, to me, it's not an acceptable answer.
As doctors weigh up the human cost of the pandemic, the Federal Reserve Chair delivered a stark warning that the US was experiencing an economic hit without modern precedent.
The loss of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses across the country would destroy the life's work and family legacy of many businesses and community leaders, and limit the strength of the recovery when it comes. These businesses are a principal source of job creation, something we will need sorely as people seek to return to work.
As restrictions are lifted, modelling for America's death toll has risen too, with 147,000 lives now expected to be lost by August.
The mayor of Villers-Bretonneux has lost his battle with coronavirus. Patrick Simon had been in a coma for nearly 7 weeks after contracting COVID-19. He was remembered as a great friend of Australia who worked tirelessly to honour the Anzac sacrifice in France. A memorial service will be arranged after the pandemic eases. It's been 30 years since they shared the screen. Now the Back to the Future cast has defied time once again. Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd and their co-stars reunited virtually to reflect on the classic movie franchise. Then Marty and Doc teamed up in a blast from the past.
It can't be. I just sent you back to the future.
I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott!
The reunion served as a fundraiser for COVID-19 charities. We'll bring you the Prime Minister live as soon as he appears in Canberra. But next in 7 News, Spot with Mel McLaughlin. We're live with details on a dramatic morning at the AFL's COVID-19 testing facility. And the NRL signs off on the switch back to one referee, despite opposition from players and coaches.
The racing is back.
Elected a half in front.
He thrashes it, takes the lead. See it all Saturday, live and free on 7.
HelloFresh. Delicious meals delivered to your door with pre-portioned fresh ingredients. Now you can focus on what's really important. Order your box today. HelloFresh. Inspiration delivered.
Right now, it's time to stay safe. Right now, it's time to stay home. But there's one thing you should never stop doing, and that's dreaming of your next adventure. Because even though today we can't hit the beach, we can't head for the hills, or even just push the boat out, it won't be forever.
How good is that RSPCA pet insurance feeling? The feeling of getting up to 80% of your eligible vet bills reimbursed. And knowing you can claim up to $20,000 a year with no excess to pay. There are 4 affordable levels of award-winning cover to choose from. Plus, a portion of your first year's premium goes to supporting the RSPCA. Experience that RSPCA pet insurance feeling today. Call 138 548 or search RSPCA Pet Insurance now.
A few days ago, John had muscle pain. Then he discovered Voltaren ML Gel. It relieves pain 2 times faster and reduces inflammation. Voltaren, the joy of movement.
1, 2, 3, 4. So clap it back. Hey, clap, clap. So clap it back. Hey, I'm getting you right back. 'Cause you're not gonna stand around living like that. So clap it back. Clap it. Clap, clap. Alright. So clap it back. Hey, hey.
Centrum provides multiple health benefits in just one tablet. Centrum, complete from A to Zinc.
Omtanke isn't just a word. It's a new perspective, a considerate, more caring one. Omtanke, we welcome you to try it. Volvo.
Woolworths online shopping is back for all customers. We have thousands of extra delivery and pickup windows now open to serve even more customers. Visit woolworths.com.au and start shopping today.
Good morning. It's been a morning of drama at the AFL's Marvel Stadium testing site just hours after the league was blindsided by the South Australian government. Live now to Chief Football reporter Mark Stevens. Steve-O, bizarre scenes in Melbourne.
Amazing scenes. This footy season just gets crazier. Of course, at Marvel Stadium, all the players lining up for COVID-19 testing, and a person arrested allegedly for leaving a stolen vehicle. So he was driving along down in Docklands, believed to be a man from Hawthorn, a car stolen from Bundoora, and then drove in behind some Collingwood players. So amazing scenes there as we head about our footy at the moment. Also crazy scenes in Adelaide. We were expecting the South Australian government to, of course, tick off on fly-in, fly-out footy. That hasn't happened, and it looks like Adelaide and Port Adelaide are going to have to cross the border now into a hub situation. Adelaide perhaps now headed to Melbourne, Port Adelaide up to Queensland. Let's have a listen to David Koch, the chairman of Port, this morning.
Our preference is Queensland, but obviously we'll base it anywhere we can to be part of the competition. It'll put us at a severe disadvantage to the big Melbourne clubs and other interstate clubs, along with the West Australian clubs, but that will make victory even sweeter.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be tough for those sides. Certainly Port and Adelaide were expecting the government to be in favour, but the health officials have basically overridden the Premier, and now they're basically going to have to pack their bags and head interstate, Mel.
Yeah, interesting times indeed. Thanks very much, Mark Stevens, there with an update in the AFL. Well, the NRL's plan to revert to one referee when the season resumes is official. The cost-cutting move was signed off at a commission meeting last night, along with a new rule to give attacking teams 6 more tackles for ruck infringements. It is hoped that rule will eliminate the problem of wrestling moves slowing down the ruck.
We want to make the game as entertaining as we can. If it's 6 again and a team's got to try and score a try, then why not?
Titan Bryce Cartwright is now the only player stood down for refusing the flu vaccine after teammate Brian Kelly reportedly agreed to have the shot. Cartwright has to tell the club if he will get the shot by the end of today. Aussie batsman Travis Head says India's upcoming tour of Australia will show who the best team in the world is. With international cricket on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic, Head and his Australian teammates will begin pre-season training with their state squads in the coming weeks. But they have their eyes locked on India.
Making sure you own home and making sure that you can win games of cricket in your home country. That's what puts you at the top of those rankings, and that's what we're bound to do.
The date of the first test is yet to be announced. And it was a tough transition to virtual racing for Supercars legend Craig Lowndes last night. Lowndes struggled in the E-Series round at the Circuit of the Americas in Texas. Formula One star Lando Norris became the first international driver to have a race win, and he's picked up a bit of Aussie slang as well.
Yeah, you know, I'm with Australian teammates. I've been learning some things, and that's the most valuable thing I've learned out of all of this is yeah.
Aussie F1 star Daniel Ricciardo is set to leave Renault and join McLaren from next season. Well, isolation has brought out the imaginations of extreme athletes around the world, like English mountain biker Matt Jones. Along with his brother, Jones has had enough time on his hands to build an entire track right in his backyard. To show the track can handle being ridden on, Jones showed off his skills before finishing with a spectacular backflip. And don't know what your backyard looks like, but that one is pretty impressive indeed.
Thanks very much, Mel. Thanks. In other news today, Hong Kong police have held back demonstrators inside a shopping mall as violence re-escalates. Video shows a group surrounding a police officer armed with pepper spray as he held down a protester who was under arrest. The demonstrators have resumed their protest, demanding the liberation of Hong Kong from China. We're standing by for a press conference with the Prime Minister. Let's bring in our political editor, Mark Riley. Mark, good morning to you. Waiting for that PM to respond to the new job figures just out, up to 6.2% this morning.
That's right, Anne. 6.2% and 594,000 jobs lost in that month, a record number of jobs lost. But beneath some of the predictions, of course, it's masked somewhat by the JobKeeper allowance, which keeps a lot of people out of the unemployment queues, but effectively without jobs. The Prime Minister and the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, will address the media in the next couple of minutes to outline what the government's strategy is to put those people back into jobs in the coming months as we prepare for a post-COVID economy. The government, of course, now are starting to discuss the blueprint for what that economy will look like to create those opportunities in the Australian job market, knowing that all other countries around the world are doing similarly and going to be jealously protecting their own labour market. So a very difficult competitive environment globally going forward. These figures today say that in the first 2 weeks of last month, they're only for the first 2 weeks of each month, so the first 2 weeks of April, there was that massive drop.
Mark, here is our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. We'll take you there now live.
This is a tough day for Australia. Tough day. Almost 600,000 jobs has been lost. Every one of them devastating for those Australians, for their families, for their communities. A very tough day. Terribly shocking, although not unanticipated. We knew there would be hard news as the pandemic reaps its impact on Australia, as it is on countries all around the world. And so it has been the case. And in the months ahead, we can brace ourselves and must brace ourselves for further hard news for Australians to take. But it's important on a day like today that we remember to support each other again, but also to seek to take heart and to encourage each other in hope. Almost 600,000 Australians losing work can disappoint that hope. It can break hearts, but as important as a country that we stand firm and we stand together. The plan that the government has been pursuing from the outset of this outbreak has been to fight this war on two fronts: to fight the virus and to fight the economic devastation that the virus brings. It has always been a battle on each of these that has been critically important. On the virus, of course, we've made great progress. We're winning, but we have not won. When it comes to our economy, we anticipated that this would be the impact. And so we did not wait to put in place the economic support and lifelines that would be needed. This was done many, many weeks ago, and at record levels, with both the expansion of Job Seeker to support those who could not stay with their employers. And for the first time for so many of them, they would seek unemployment support. Or indeed, the JobKeeper program, which is doing exactly that, keeping people in their jobs. A program of a scale this country has never seen before, and I hope never has to see again, to respond to such a weighty economic blow as we've seen occurring in these recent months. So those supports were there. They were put in place in anticipation of this day because we knew it would come and more will follow. And these supports will remain vital in the months ahead as Australia works its way through. But a key component of the plan is not just to have the supports and fight the virus, but to reopen our economy. And that is happening. A national initiative, states and territories working together to reopen our economies, to get Australians back into the jobs, to get the hours back, to get the incomes back, and to get the Australian economy into a COVID-safe environment where the economy can support them and take them forward. And that confidence will build, as we are already seeing occurring. The surveys, whether it's from Westpac or from ANZ or others, which shows that rebound occurring as Australians see the plan and can see the road ahead. I've told you before, when I left university and soon after, we went into the last recession. I remember it. I remember friends, I remember family who lost jobs, who couldn't get jobs. It was hard. This is harder. We haven't seen this before. And for many young people who have never experienced that, this is beyond anything they could imagine. But out of that recession, Australia came back and has gone on to record the longest run in economic growth in recorded economic history, according to some. It shows the resilience of Australians to bounce back, to recover, to work, to support each other, their communities, their ingenuity, their hard work. That's the way out. It's always been the way out for us. And that's what Australians can take hope in today, that despite right now, right here, Australians hurting today, they can look forward knowing, on the basis of our national character and our ingenuity and our resolution, that we will see those better days and we will come through this together as we have always promised that we would together. So I've asked the Treasurer to join me today. He can speak more specifically to the numbers. But I want to commend all of those who have been involved with the JobKeeper and the Job Seeker programs, because that is what holds the nation up at this point in time, as it should in times of emergency. And there will come a time where that won't be necessary. But for now, right now, as we work to rebuild our economy, that is where our focus must be, those supports and the difficult task of reopening to get Australians back on their feet. John.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. This is a very tough day, and these unemployment numbers, and to hear, as the Prime Minister said, some 600,000 fewer Australians in a job is heartbreaking. These are families, these are friends, these are neighbours, these are workmates. Now, Australians know that we have confronted this global pandemic, this economic shock, the size of which the country has never ever seen before, from a position of economic strength. When growth was rising, unemployment was falling, the budget was in balance for the first time in 11 years, and, according to the Reserve Bank Governor, the fundamentals of the Australian economy were very strong. But today's unemployment numbers reveal the real and painful economic impact of the coronavirus. The participation rate has fallen to 63.5%. As the Prime Minister said, 594,000 fewer Australians are in a job. 325,000 of those were women. The youth unemployment rate has risen to 13.8%, up from 11.5%. But this reiterates why our financial commitments to respond to the coronavirus were so important and are so important. The cash flow boost at over $30 billion, helping to keep businesses in business. The job seeker payment with the $550 coronavirus supplement, effectively doubling what was known as New Start. The 50% wage subsidy for apprentices across the country. And of course, the $130 billion JobKeeper program. And I can inform you that today, the number of employees covered by those businesses that are formally enrolled in the JobKeeper program now exceeds 6 million. So we have 1.6 million Australians who are on job seeker and youth allowance, and now we have 6 million Australian employees that are covered by the more than 860,000 businesses that are formally enrolled in the JobKeeper program. And as the Prime Minister said, the lifting of these restrictions, albeit gradually and based on the health advice, will help get people back to work. Some 850,000 people will be back in work as a result of stage 1, 2 and 3 restrictions being lifted. And also as a result, the economy will be better off by $9.4 billion a month. So as the Prime Minister has said, there is still a long way to go and the economic numbers will get worse before they get better. Today, our thoughts are with those Australians who are doing it tough, but they know that their government has their back.
Phil.
You may have to expand JobKeeper now above the $30 billion if it's already fully subscribed.
Well, it's a demand-driven program, and so it is extended to all of those to whom the parameters provide for. And we had estimated that we would have a need of this order, and that has proved to be true. And they were hard numbers when we saw them the first time, Phil, and we knew that that was likely what would be required. And when you're running a program that is asking of taxpayers more than $20 billion a month, that's a big load. But Australians are carrying it, and they're carrying it for their fellow Australians. And so we will continue to run the program as we've set it out, to provide that support on a demand-driven basis. So it is built to take up the load that it is designed to carry.
You've said that there'll be a review of the JobKeeper program in June. What will that review encompass? Will it look at the possibility of a longer taper for sectors that are harder hit, such as hospitality, when restaurants won't necessarily be able to make a profit like they used to under the remaining restrictions on gatherings?
Sure. The review was built into the process when we started the JobKeeper program, when the Treasurer and I announced it here. And the Treasurer, I'm sure, will comment as well. This was a program that, while brought together at a very quick pace, was not one that was done in undue haste. It was done carefully. There was important design work that was done. It accorded with the principles that I set out in early March to ensure that these were temporary measures, that they relied and drew on existing payment mechanisms, and in this case through the Australian Taxation Office, and that was scalable. And this is all the case. But when you move a program as quickly as this, then you anticipate that there will be some anomalies and issues that need to be addressed along the way. And we have indeed been doing that, and the Treasurer has been doing that, and the review will take into account those issues as we move forward. The time frame for this was set out at the time it went through the Parliament, and the review will provide an opportunity to see how the program is going and the experience on the ground, and to make any amendments that are necessary. The Treasurer, I think.
Well, thanks, Prime Minister. Yes, the review will be conducted the end of June, and obviously the money is going out the door as fast as possible. And you heard from the Secretary of Treasury at the COVID committee that this is record-breaking pace for money going out the door.
36% of the total 594,000 come from the 15 to 24 age bracket. What's your plan to ensure the youth of Australia won't be the biggest casualty of this crisis on the other side of it? And how many more jobs could be lost if we don't sort out the current tensions that we have with China?
Well, let me make a couple of points. Our plan is to reopen the Australian economy, and bringing the National Cabinet together to ensure that we are working together, states, territories and at a Commonwealth level, to ensure we're all heading in the same direction, which is exactly what's occurring. At different paces, dependent on the caseloads and circumstances in each territory and each state, but all moving to reopen the economy. And I would urge people to not underestimate the scale of that task. It's one thing to close things down. It's entirely another to open them up again, and to do so in a COVID-safe way. And that's why we can't get too far ahead of ourselves here. The task we have now is to reopen these businesses, to get employees back into their jobs, and to do so in a COVID-safe way so that it's sustainable for many years potentially, if that is what is required. And so the task and the message I have for those young people is that's why I have been so forward-leaning. Whether it has been the reopening of schools, which has been, on Treasury's advice, one of the most key areas to unlock and reopen our economy. And based on the health advice, which has always been so consistent, that has been a necessary step. And I know, sure, I may have been pretty insistent about this, but the reason I was is I know how important it is to open up those jobs again and get those young people back into work. Now, once we go through that process of reopening the economy, it is also then to ensure that the skills and the training and the businesses that they work for and that will be looking to employ them and rehire them or increase their hours or restore their positions can do so in a competitive way. We don't want an Australian economy that's propped up by subsidies. We want an Australian economy that's propped up by strong businesses with strong markets and with great products and services that are competitive in a global marketplace. You know, Australia is one of the great trading nations of the world, and that's why we've always pursued trade in all countries, wherever we see those opportunities. If you stand still long enough next to one of our trade ministers in recent years, they would have sought to do a deal with you. And that's what we've done. And we'll work those trading relationships. But what we will never do is trade away our values.
Just on the youth unemployment question, there was little movement in the youth unemployment rate even prior to the pandemic over the years that the Coalition's been in government. In fact, despite the multi-million-dollar Jobs Path program, is it time to review some of those youth unemployment measures, given that they haven't really worked, especially now that we're nudging 14%?
Well, I don't agree with the premise of your question. I mean, the premise of the facts of your question are just simply not right. So we had seen quite strong falls from the peaks of youth unemployment under the policies we've put in place, including the ones you referred to. So I'm sorry, I can't share your analysis. So if I don't share it, I can hardly comment on it. Yeah.
What is it for you to see people on Job Seeker start seeking work as the economy reopens?
Sorry, I just didn't hear the start of that.
How important is it for you that people on Job Seeker start actually seeking work as the economy reopens, as restrictions are lifted?
Well, this is a very important question, and the Treasurer might want to comment on this as well. The Minister for Employment will be having a bit more to say about this today. And it is very important that as the economy starts opening up again, and as we start getting out from under this doona that we're under, that people do go back and start seeking those opportunities. Now, in how that relates to our employment programs, we will take that at a fair and even pace, and I'll let the Minister of Employment speak more to that. But it is important. It is also important that when you have what are effectively unemployment benefits through job seeker at the levels that they are, that when you do that, that can provide, in normal circumstances, a disincentive with payments at that level for people to go and seek work. And that's why these arrangements with the COVID supplement are temporary arrangements. The reason the COVID supplement was put in place was because we knew that those who would otherwise be on job seeker, who might in better times be able to go and find employment, that during this period that would be very difficult. So we understood that. But as the economy reopens and as opportunities open up again, then of course we would want to see people taking up those opportunities when they present. And so we will do that I think in a fair way, and recognising that still there are few opportunities that are out there at present, but we're looking forward to seeing those opportunities reopening. Yeah, Rosie.
Prime Minister, what do you say to Andrew Lee's comment yesterday that Australia was acting as the deputy sheriff to the US by leading calls for an investigation, an international investigation into the origins of the coronavirus?
Well, if the Labor Party want to share the criticisms of Australia by our critics, then I think that is really something for them to reflect on.
Do you believe Australia has been?
No.
Prime Minister.
We have always been independent. We have always pursued our national interest, and we always will. We will always be Australians in how we engage with the rest of the world, and we will always stand our ground when it comes to the things that we believe in and the values that we uphold. We will always reach out to the rest of the world and seek to deal with them fairly and honestly and openly, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. And Australia, in the way we engage on our terms, in our interests, with our values, is something that we as a government are very proud of. And I thank those who have been so supportive of that position, including the AWU.
China, George Christensen, Nationals MP, has suggested that the Port of Darwin lease should be put on the bargaining table in this trade tensions with China. How helpful is that contribution, and what does it say about the state of the relationship that the Trade Minister and Agriculture Minister can't get a phone call back from their Chinese counterpart? Well,
this is obviously a difficult time as we deal with one particular set of trade issues that relate to anti-dumping, as well as the what is effectively the administration around beef exports to China. And our agencies, our officers, our ministers, we will just work through all the normal channels, and we've always been available to make it very clear that Australia will always do the right thing when it comes to respecting other countries' laws. The great thing about sovereignty is we always respect the sovereignty of other nations, and we simply expect the same in return. And I think that's a pretty fair deal.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
These numbers don't really paint the full picture, do they? How many people of the 6 million that are on JobKeeper have been laid off but are effectively unemployed?
Well, I'll let the Treasurer speak more to this. When you get underneath the numbers, I think what you'll see is that the estimates that Treasury have put together earlier are reflected in these numbers. While the headline rate is at just over 6, when you have almost 600,000 people exit employment, that is a devastating set of numbers. And when you look at hours worked and all of those issues as well, what you do see is an even deeper impact, and I think that's reflected in what the Treasury was saying. What I would add to that, though, is that the reason that people have been able to stay connected to their employers has been because of the JobKeeper program, and clearly the JobKeeper program has been incredibly effective. I mean, 6 million Australians have been supported at their worst moment, and hundreds of thousands of businesses. Now, granted, there will be issues that are raised at the margin on a program of this scale, but let's not lose sight of the forest for the trees here. I mean, this is a program of historic proportions that is helping 6 million Australians right here, right now. Josh.
Well, the median market expectation for unemployment today was at 8.2%. So it's come at a significantly reduced number to that. But that reflects the success of the JobKeeper program. That reflects the fact that we are maintaining the connection between employees and employers, even though some of these businesses have had to close their doors because of the restrictions. And the Prime Minister and I and the government have been constantly talking about building the bridge to recovery. And to get these people back into a job as fast as possible, we need to start easing those restrictions based on the health advice, because that is what is going to get hundreds of thousands of our fellow Australians back into work.
John?
Queensland taxpayers' money to make a bid or indeed purchase an equity stake in Virgin Australia?
Well, I'm not going to buy into that. What we have done, and the Treasurer I'm sure will want to comment on, is the process we've engaged in. And that is ensuring that Virgin will keep flying and will fly into the future. And we resisted what were, I think, very preemptive and I think rather dangerous calls for the Commonwealth to engage in this area on behalf of taxpayers at that early phase. And I think as a result of that good judgment, to allow this process to do its job, which is what is occurring. There are many bids that are coming through the process, Treasurer, and we welcome that. We want a competitive aviation market here in Australia. We want to see these two airlines flying and competing and giving a great deal to the flying public, and to ensure that the freight keeps moving around this country. And we believe that will be the outcome. And we look forward to the best arrangements being accepted ultimately by the administrators and for those Virgin employees. I think that's what they're seeking and they're looking forward to, and I'm sure that will be the outcome for them. And so we're going to let the process run. We're not going to put a commentary on this bid or that bid. And what we want is a commercial airline that can stand on its own 2 feet and employ the thousands of Australians that it does and be successful. Josh.
Well, thanks, Prime Minister. Well, as we've said before, Virgin is not Ansett. This is not a liquidation. This is voluntary administration. And indeed, the voluntary administrator has said that they are shortly going to narrow down the list of interested parties and then to welcome them into the next stage of this process. The federal government's not in the business of owning an airline. We're interested in a market solution.
Firstly, to the Treasurer, is 10% still your expected peak for unemployment? And Prime Minister, what is your response to Kim Carr saying that calls from within your government for more oversight of Chinese military science collaborations with Australian scientists are reminiscent of campaigns directed against science by far-right politicians in Europe in the 1930s?
Well, I'll let Josh speak first.
Well, Treasury's forecast is still for unemployment to reach around 10%. But importantly, Treasury have also said, but for the JobKeeper program, it would be 15%. And that's really important to understand.
Those were very disappointing remarks. He has a bit of form on this too, I note, which is also disappointing, but that's a matter for Mr Albanese to address and for the Labor Party to address, I suppose. Look, Australia is a nation of free speech, and that means that people say things from time to time, and even under privilege of this place, which people can find deeply offensive. And I have no doubt that people have found that deeply offensive, and that is for something for Senator Carr to reflect on. But our values are important to us as a country, and that's why we stand up for them each and every day. And we're about transparency, we're about fairness, we're about market-based economies, we're about a globalised world which respects the individual sovereign states that makes it up and enables for the free engagement between those nation states. And that's what we're about, and that's why I think Australia is held in the high regard that it is. And people can always expect Australia, especially under our government, to act always in that way. Thanks very much, everyone.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison there describing the April jobless figures as hard news, difficult news, a devastating set of numbers, and saying we should brace ourselves for more bad news ahead. 594,000 Australians lost their jobs in April, the unemployment rate rising to 6.2%. The Prime Minister acknowledging the personal hardship and human toll that has wrought on families, but saying that number would have been higher and the hardship even greater if not for the JobKeeper program. Now 6 million workers covered by that. And the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, saying the lifting of restrictions over coming months will put 850,000 Australians back to work by mid-July. These economic numbers, though, will get worse before they get better. So a record monthly increase in unemployment, 6.2%, and another record expected next month. That's all from Canberra. We'll have more for you in our comprehensive 7 News bulletins at 4 and 6.
He's a complete stranger.